When you hear the word gang, your mind immediately races toward a very specific set of images curated by decades of Hollywood movies, true crime documentaries, and sensationalized evening news. You picture sleek, blacked-out SUVs cruising slowly down neon-lit avenues. You imagine briefcases stuffed with unlaundered, untraceable cash. You envision vast networks of illicit trade, underground empires built on racketeering, extortion, and systemic violence. You think of cartels, syndicates, the mafia. You think of power. You think of money. You think of absolute, terrifying control over a city's beating heart. But let's play a little thought experiment today. Let's strip all of that away. Take away the multi-million-dollar drug empires. Take away the political connections, the bribed judges, and the luxury cars. Take away the weapons, the underground casinos, and the fearsome reputations. What happens if a gang is formed right in the middle of your quiet, perfectly average, utterly unremarkable town? And what if this gang has absolutely nothing? No money. No power. No resources. No criminal connections. Nothing at all. Just a group of individuals who decided, on a boring Tuesday afternoon, that they are a syndicate. What would that actually look like? How would they operate? And perhaps the most fascinating question of all, how would your town react to a criminal empire that can't even afford to commit a crime? Every organization needs an origin story, a mythical genesis that binds its members together. Our gang doesn't start in a smoke-filled backroom with a blood oath, a severed fingertip, or a multi-million-dollar heist. It starts with an agonizing, soul-crushing boredom. It starts with a handful of people, let's call them the town's invisible citizens. They are the high school dropouts working zero-hour contracts, the 20-somethings who never managed to leave their childhood bedrooms, the chronic drifters, the people who slipped through the cracks of a society that demands constant, profitable productivity. Society has practically ignored them, and out of that shared, profound alienation, a spark ignites. They do not have a grand manifesto. The founder, let's call him the boss, does not command respect through fear or financial leverage. He commands it simply because he is the only one with a reliable internet connection on his phone and knows where to hang out on a Thursday night. They decide to form a crew. But immediately, they hit a brick wall. Gangs need symbols. They need colors, intricate tattoos, and custom leather jackets to strike fear into the hearts of their rivals. But our gang has a collective budget of exactly $0 and whatever loose change they can fish out of the cushions of a discarded couch. So, their colors become whatever cheap, generic clothing they happen to already own. Maybe it is a specific brand of discount gray hoodie from the local big box store. Maybe it is the fact that they all silently agree to tie their left shoe with a double knot and leave the right one untied. It is a desperately mundane symbol of unity. To the outside world, they look like a random assortment of unkempt locals. But to them? That double-knotted shoelace is the mark of the syndicate. It is a secret language, a banner under which they unite against a world that does not care about them. Next comes the deeply primal issue of territory. A gang must claim its turf. In the movies, gangs fight tooth and nail for control of the lucrative downtown nightlife district, the bustling shipping ports, or the high-rises where the elite play. Our gang, however, armed with no transportation other than 2 rusty bicycles and their own 2 feet, must claim whatever is within a reasonable walking distance. They cannot claim the local shopping mall, the security guards would simply ask them to leave, and they lack the leverage to refuse. They cannot claim the downtown strip. There is nowhere to sit without buying a $5 artisan coffee, which is financially out of the question. So, they claim the most useless, undesirable piece of geography in the entire town. They claim the overgrown, weed-infested empty dirt lot situated between a noisy highway overpass and a failing dry-cleaning business. This is their kingdom. They defend it fiercely against absolutely no one, because no one else on earth wants to be there. But in their minds, this is ground zero of their empire. However, hanging out in an abandoned lot filled with rusty nails, shattered glass, and decades of discarded fast food wrappers is wildly uncomfortable. A boss cannot hold court sitting on a pile of broken beer bottles. So, to ensure their headquarters is suitable for their daily, hours-long meetings, the gang starts picking up the trash. They drag the rusted shopping carts out of the weeds and push them back to the grocery store. They meticulously sweep the broken glass off the cracked concrete so they can sit down without tearing their prized discount hoodies. Without realizing it, in their aggressive attempt to secure and fortify their criminal turf, they have accidentally performed unpaid community service. The lot is now the cleanest it has been in 15 years. The local municipality, entirely unaware of the gang's existence or their fierce territorial claims, assumes a group of wholesome boy Scouts or a church youth group came through over the weekend to do a good deed. But a gang cannot survive on real estate alone, especially not an empty dirt lot. A gang must have an enterprise. They must commit crimes to assert their dominance and fund their expansion. Herein lies the ultimate paradox of the penniless gang. Organized crime requires startup capital. You cannot run a smuggling ring if you cannot afford to put gas in a vehicle. You cannot run an extortion racket if you do not have the physical muscle, the weapons, or the dangerous reputation to back up your threats. If you try to shake down the local bakery for protection money, the baker will simply laugh, hand you a day-old croissant out of pity, and tell you to go home before he calls your mother. So, how does a gang project power when they have absolutely no power to project? Their weapon of choice becomes sheer, unadulterated nuisance. They engage in psychological warfare through mild, everyday inconvenience. They walk down the sidewalk four abreast, forcing ordinary, tax-paying citizens to step slightly onto the grass to pass them. They aggressively jaywalk in front of slow-moving traffic, staring down middle-aged drivers in minivans as if daring them to honk. They gather near the entrance of the local gas station. They do not rob it. They could not successfully execute a robbery if they tried, and the risk of jail time terrifies them. Instead, they just stand uncomfortably close to the automatic doors, glaring at people who are just trying to buy lottery tickets and energy drinks. Loitering becomes their primary racket. They are hoarding public space, taking up as much physical and psychological room as possible to prove that they exist. They sit on the best benches. They occupy the bus stop without ever catching a bus. They speak just a little too loudly. It is an economy of annoyance. But a strange, completely unintended psychological shift begins to occur in the town. Because our gang spends 12 hours a day sitting on the curb outside the bodega, or tirelessly patrolling the perimeter of their fiercely protected dirt lot, they become hyper-aware of everything happening in the neighborhood. They possess something even the local police department does not have: infinite, uninterrupted free time and an obsessive focus on a 3-block radius. One evening, an actual outsider comes into the neighborhood. A belligerent drunk trying to smash a car window, or a petty thief trying to steal a chained-up bicycle. Our gang sees this from their vantage point at the corner store. They do not intervene out of a strong moral compass or a desire to uphold the law. They intervene because of their twisted, inflated sense of pride. Nobody commits crimes on our turf but us, the boss declares, completely ignoring the fact that they have not actually committed any crimes themselves. They swarm the outsider. They surround the drunk, yelling, puffing out their chests, pointing aggressively. The thief, confused and outnumbered by a group of highly coordinated, angry youths wearing identical double-knotted shoes, decides it is not worth the hassle and flees into the night. Once again, the great, cosmic irony of the powerless gang reveals itself. Because they cannot afford to commit real crimes, and because they are violently territorial over their mundane, everyday hangouts, they inadvertently become the most effective neighborhood watch program the town has ever seen. Crime rates in their immediate vicinity actually plummet. Car break-ins drop to zero because there are always 5 guys sitting on a nearby retaining wall staring into the street. The elderly lady who lives in the house next to the dirt lot starts baking them cookies because she feels so safe with them around. The convenience store owner, initially annoyed by their constant loitering, now gives them free fountain drinks and expired pastries, because nobody shoplifts when 5 scowling teenagers are standing sentinel by the front door. They wanted to be the mafia, a terrifying force of urban decay. They ended up becoming mall cops without the badges, accidental guardians of the very system they thought they were rebelling against. Eventually, of course, rumors of a gang reached the local police department. Concerned citizens called a non-emergency line to report a group of youths claiming territory, acting suspiciously, and wearing subtle, matched uniform markers. The police, dealing with budgets and public pressure, decide they need to investigate before this escalates into a genuine, violent threat. They set up a quiet stakeout. Plainclothes detectives sit in an unmarked sedan across the street, watching the gang's headquarters for an entire week, hoping to catch a drug deal, a weapons cache, or the meticulous planning of a major heist. What the police actually witness is a tragicomedy. They watch the gang spend 4 consecutive hours passing around a single, crushed family-sized bag of store-brand potato chips. They listen through parabolic microphones as the syndicate aggressively debates the complex lore of a fantasy video game that none of them actually own. They watch them occasionally practice cheap, highly ineffective martial arts moves they memorized from a viral internet video. There is no racketeering case to build here. There is no grand conspiracy, no money laundering, no trafficking. Loitering and being slightly obnoxious is not enough to launch a federal task force. The police eventually pack up their equipment and leave, realizing the gang is completely, utterly harmless. But our gang notices the unmarked car pulling away. Do they get scared? Do they realize they are a joke to the authorities? Absolutely not. To them, this police presence is the ultimate, intoxicating validation. The feds are watching us, they whisper to each other in the abandoned lot, their chests swelling with immense pride. We are too big. We are on their radar. The complete lack of arrests is not seen as a sign of their innocence or insignificance, but as concrete proof of their unparalleled criminal genius. They are simply too smart, too slick, to get caught by the local cops. It is incredibly easy to laugh at them. It is easy to view this powerless, penniless gang as a pathetic, comical delusion born out of suburban boredom. But if we look closer, if we peel back the thick layers of awkward posturing, tough guy grimaces, and aggressive jaywalking, we find a profound and somewhat heartbreaking truth about the human condition. We live in an increasingly atomized, hyper-individualistic world. People feel profoundly disconnected, invisible, and left behind by massive economic and social systems they cannot possibly control. Money and power dictate who matters in society, who gets a voice, and who is deemed important. And if you have neither money nor power, society treats you like a ghost. This gang, in all its absurdity and harmless posturing, is simply a desperate, beautiful attempt to manufacture meaning in a town that has completely forgotten them. When you have no financial capital, no social influence, and no promising prospects for the future, the only currency you have left in this world is loyalty. A gang, stripped of the Hollywood violence and the illicit wealth, is at its core just a promise. A promise that you belong somewhere. A promise that if the cold, indifferent world pushes you, there are 4 other people standing right behind you ready to push back, even if you are only pushing back by glaring at people in a grocery store parking lot. Eventually, our gang will dissolve. Not in a spectacular, slow-motion shootout with rival cartels, and not in a highly publicized federal courtroom trial. It will dissolve through the slow, inevitable attrition of everyday life. One member will get a full-time job at the local hardware store and simply stop having the time to loiter on Tuesday afternoons. Another will move away to a different state to be with a girlfriend. The boss might finally decide to enroll in community college and hand in his double-knotted shoes. The gang will fade seamlessly back into the quiet mundanity from which it was born, leaving no historical footprint. But for a brief, beautiful, and utterly ridiculous moment in time, they were the undisputed kings of the dirt lot. They were a family. They mattered. And perhaps, when you have absolutely nothing at all, simply mattering to someone else is the greatest, most formidable power you can ever wield.